So I do have a question, but I want to just start with gratitude. I want to thank you for your participation in The Secret. And it did turn someone's life around that I gave it to, and I'll just be specific on it. Young man, my nephew was at school, in high school, private school, an undiagnosed nerve damage in his foot, and for months. And I gave him The Secret. He ended up starting playing the guitar, somehow got through all that. He's now writing songs for Boys to Men, and
Oh, wow. That's
happily
great.
married and has a child. So thank you for that. So my question, the context for my question is, I've been an entrepreneur, been a wealth manager, I've been a public servant, and I've also been a philanthropist. And one of the things that comes to mind that I would ask you is about calling. Calling, yeah. So how do you identify it? And for a group like this, who I believe many of the people here are called, we're all here inspired by each other and inspired by something in the atmosphere. And we want to know what's the best way to answer that call once you can identify it.
Well, I think people get called in different ways at different times. For me, I just was always following what I was interested in. And I was listening to I call it today my intuition. Back then, I just was what I was curious about or what I was attracted to. The interesting thing about the law of attraction, which The Secret talks about, it's not just what you want to attract into your life, but it's also what attracts you. Giving yourself permission to go for that, because there's a lot of, I was talking to a gentleman this morning who grew up in India, he's a doctor, and I told him this joke I'd heard in India, that in India there's only 3 things you can grow up to be. You either grow up to be an engineer, a doctor, or a disappointment to your parents. And so a lot of times
Okay.
we do the thing that we think we're supposed to do to garner, approval and inclusion and all of that. And there's not a lot of reinforcement in our culture in general for do the thing you love, My dad, when I went off to college, said, make sure you get a good job, make sure they have a good pension plan, that was his map. And when I decided to become a teacher, he thought, well, that's not going to make you much money. And when I decided I'm going to run a retreat center and teach, he was like, what are you doing? It's like he didn't get it. And, a lot of us get that kind of messaging from our parents, from our culture. So I think if you can listen to your heart, I think if you pray or meditate and you just tune in and ask, like I always ask, what would you have me do today? Not my will, but thy will kind of thing. And sometimes I get answers that are like, really? But I do it. And sometimes they're just little things, like call this person, spend more time with your grandson. Sometimes they're big things, write a book about that. Don't do that project, Right now I'm being called to slow way down in my work, but I don't want to retire, as you heard earlier. So, and the call can come in the external world. I'll give you a story. There's a friend named Ken Behring, who he was worth about $400 or $500 million, and he is very successful up in Seattle. And I heard him talk at a conference I was at, and he said, my life was in 4 stages. The first stage was called stuff. I thought if I had all the right stuff, I'd be happy. Wasn't happy. So I figured I need better stuff. So I bought a better car, a better airplane, a better whatever, bigger house, more jewelry, more cars, but still wasn't happy. And I said, well, maybe I'm buying the wrong kind of stuff. So he bought the Seattle Seahawks with a couple of his friends, thinking, wow, I'll be cool now. I'm in the owner's box. So I still wasn't happy. And then he said, a friend called him up and said, I'm going to Bosnia-Herzegovina and I'm going to give out wheelchairs to kids who lost their legs, either to landmines or congenitally. Would you like to come? He said, sure. So they fly over there, and they've got all these wheelchairs, and they land on the tarmac, and all these kids are lined up, and they're putting these kids into wheelchairs, and this one boy, he puts him in a wheelchair, and as he goes to go away, the boy grabs his leg, won't let go. And so through tears and an interpreter, he said, please don't leave yet. I want to memorize your face. So when we meet again in heaven, I can thank you one more time. And it was like, he said, wow, I never felt pure joy more than I did in that moment. Came home and he started the Ken Behring Wheelchair Foundation. They've given away, I'm going to make up a number, but it's like 40 or 50,000 wheelchairs. And he said, I found my calling. But that's a different thing than maybe listening to God talking to you, or, so I think there's a lot of
like
different
a
ways
signpost.
to do that. Sometimes it's external. Sometimes you keep seeing the same thing, or someone gives you a book, or it happens a lot of different ways. But you know it, because he said, I felt pure joy in that moment. We've been talking about the experience of joy. If you're feeling joy, you're probably responding to your calling, living your purpose, however you want to phrase that.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.